Hi, I'm Shoshana.
And I'm Holly, and you're listening to Future Talent Talks, a podcast for early careers professionals that speaks about all things early careers,
Gen A to Z, stereotypes, social and societal trends, and everything in between. Welcome back to another episode of Future Talent Talks. Today we will be talking about a very interesting topic, but we also have a very special guest. It's not only a special guest, our first ever guest. We would love to welcome Stephen Adeoye.
Hello.
Welcome to the pod.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. I genuinely feel honoured that I'm the first guest. Like literally when Shoshana messaged me and said, "Do you want to be the guest?" I was gassed. I was like, oh, that's really cool. So yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me on.
We're buzzing to have you on.
Thank you. And it's sick what you guys are doing as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I feel like more employers need this. So,
yes.
Well, yeah, who better to get you on than for this topic today, basically.
Exactly.
We are speaking today about diversity in early careers. So we're going to be talking about diversity and inclusion and the whole landscape, and basically getting your perspective on what you think employers are doing well, what they aren't doing well, and tips and advice that people that are watching can implement, because you've done a lot of work in this space, a lot of amazing work.
Thank you.
That I'm sure we'll dive into today.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we've got 4 chapters for this episode. Right, so the first chapter is about the state of diversity and inclusion in early careers.
Got you.
The second is about tips for attracting diverse talent in early careers. The third is about how to actually keep that talent, which I'm sure you've got a lot to speak about. And then, as always, chapter 4, we always do a homework chapter where we basically just give actionable tips for employers that are watching to take away and implement.
Got you.
So that they're not just listening, they can actually go and implement things that we're speaking about.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a great place to start before we delve into chapter 1 is to hear a bit about you, to give our listeners a bit of context. So can you tell us, what is it you do?
Yeah.
And who are you as well?
Yeah, and how did you get into all of this?
Got you. Stephen. And I'm the founder and CEO of an organization called Beyond Education.
Yeah.
And we are basically a talent and employer branding agency that help organizations like build their employer brands and ultimately attract diverse talent. Now, how I got into that was a squiggly line, if you will, because I was working in finance for a number of years, and I'd kind of noticed that a lot of my peers were struggling to get jobs, and I thought it was quite easy, honestly. So I started helping my peers, here's my CV, use it to get a job kind of thing, because I didn't think it was that hard. And then eventually I noticed that this was actually a wide-scale problem. A lot of people, graduates specifically, were just really struggling to get into these corporate industries, and I think that's when I kind of started Beyond Education, but as a mere Instagram page. And that was actually my introduction to Shoshana. We were literally lockdown babies, basically just creating content online, trying to advise people on careers and whatnot, right? So I was doing that for a bit, and I had no interest in setting up a business, honestly. When I saw people,
surprises me about you.
Yeah, when I saw people setting up businesses, I was just like, what the hell? This corporate thing is not that hard. Why would I literally quit and go and set up a business and suffer? Do you know what I mean? And I very much had aspirations of taking over the corporate world, because I just saw a clear, unlike everyone else in this day and age that wants to set up a business, I saw a very clear path to be financially well off, especially working in finance. So to me, it didn't really appeal to me going to go set up my own business. But what ended up happening basically is that I made a few career decisions that I just wasn't really happy with eventually, which kind of led to me just not really feeling fulfilled in my career. And at that point, I think when lockdown happened, we all experienced growth of our platforms because we had a lot of time to make content. So I kind of caught a buzz there, and I kept on growing on socials. And I was at this crossroads basically where a couple of career decisions I make, which allowed me to not be fulfilled no more, led to the point of thinking, maybe I should kind of start a business. And this was basically me going through a quarter life crisis. And I kind of sat down and thought to myself, okay, cool, what do I have? I have a decent social media following. And I basically just put together the basis of what I think I could do with the social media following, which is basically helping organizations attract talent. And I guess the diversity lens kind of came into play because of I worked in high finance, private equity and asset management. And when I started to work in these industries, I just noticed that a lot of people didn't look like me. So at that point, I was like, oh, okay, cool. I have this audience that is majority made of diverse talent. I could just help organizations attract this diverse talent using my socials. And that's how it kind of became a business in itself. And yeah, that's pretty much what I do to date now. And it's been 2 years. So yeah, that's pretty much my story.
The platform that you built up, how big was that before you started?
This is a very good point because someone was kind of telling me they want to give up on what they're doing and they can't be bothered, and they had like a significantly bigger following than me, and we can kind of get into it. But when I quit, I think I had like 3,000 followers on LinkedIn. I had like 7,000 followers on TikTok, and I had just under like 1,000 subscribers in my newsletter.
That's a lot.
I just think that obviously, like, I think it's amazing, but also because I've known you for like a little while now, I feel like I've seen the different like variations of beyond education, and obviously you're doing amazing things now, but you know, it's not always been that way.
Not at all.
You started off and you were, you know, when you first started doing beyond education, you were like trying to set up and offer services to students.
There's been so many iterations.
It's been like a journey, and I don't even think it matters about. It doesn't even matter how many followers you have.
Yeah.
I think in my perspective, what's more special about what you're doing is like the community you've created. It's different. Like, you don't just have followers. You're not just an influencer and like people follow you. You've created a community and people actually really value what you say and what you're doing, and they care about you.
Yeah,
You're not just like
definitely.
an influencer.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's really important. So obviously chapter 1 is all about, you know, the state of diversity in early careers. So let's talk a little bit about D&I or DE&I. So obviously we've all seen the headlines, right? D&I is cancelled. Google and Meta made cuts to their DEI programs. Microsoft have fired their D&I teams. I don't know how true those accusations are, but I've seen the headlines. I'm sure you have as well. From your perspective, you know, what actually is the current, and as someone that is in the industry, what is the current state of D&I from like an early careers perspective, but also a candidate perspective? So what are some of the specific challenges you're maybe seeing employers face, but then also young people from diverse backgrounds? Yeah.
So I think, the current state of DEI is very much like it's getting cancelled. I think that narrative is definitely true, because I think essentially the uptake of DEI was in 2020 when like tragic events happened with George Floyd and whatnot. And I guess this just sparked like a national outrage, and a lot of employers with good intent were like, oh, we need to do something about it. A lot of employers were also performative in that respect. But long story short, it created this kind of bubble, if you will, of, okay, cool, we need to do stuff with DEI because there's like massive outrage. And like, you know, a lot of these organizations have people that are diverse, right? So obviously their employees are not happy about it. So they're like, okay, cool, we need to do something. Now, what's ended up happening is that through the series of events with COVID, the tragic events, we're also in a very like unfavorable economic climate where organizations are just struggling to make money. So what I've kind of seen now is that, okay, cool, we're struggling to make money. We need to find something to, I guess, like,
blame?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of my words carefully, but we need to find something to blame. And I feel like what organizations have started doing now is like, okay, who can we blame? Yeah, look, this DEI thing, like, you know, it's not really a business priority at the moment. I mean, I even saw like, you know, when a couple of banks, like there was a big like high profile bank, I won't mention names, but they went into like liquidation, right? And the headline was literally like, yeah, because they've been focusing on all these diversity programs. And ultimately that's what's kind of happening now. And I think that's why like, I always try to give myself grace, even though like building this business is really hard, but I try to give myself grace. Like I'm trying to sell something to organizations that are literally cancelling this thing. So it's like really, really difficult. So I think, that's kind of the current state at the moment. But the thing is, the good thing about it is that there's a lot of employers out there. So as much as, there's certain employers that are firing teams, making people redundant, there's still some good employers out there that we work with that are very much like, no, we recognize this as a business priority and we very much need to do this. So that's number one. Now, if we like look at it in the lens of like early careers, I think what I always find interesting is that these are billion-dollar corporations that say they don't know how to attract diverse talent. I find that so comical. I'm like, you guys have all the money in the world, all the resources, all the teams. What do you mean you can't get black talent in through the door or like female talent in through the door? That doesn't make sense to me, like, right? And how come I've managed to figure it out and I don't have all these resources in the world? And what I think is that a lot of these big organizations, they have like a lot of criteria for talent to kind of go through the door. And what I started to really do when we started working with bigger companies is I started to think, okay, cool. If you guys are saying you can't attract diverse talent, how the hell can I do it? I really needed to be critical. So I started asking about the data. So I was like, where do diverse talent actually drop off, like, in your process? And they were like, oh, like, you know, the application stage. And I was like, well, there's nothing I can do about that because I just attract the talent. But like, if they're dropping off at the application stage, I'm not the solution to your problem. And that's what I kind of started to realize. So long story short, I think these organizations have certain processes that diverse talent, for some reason whatsoever, just don't get through. And I think what I started to do is I started to try and advise clients, like, let's optimize that process. Like, okay, how can we make this application process more favorable for diverse talent to basically get through? Does it mean, like, I guess like pulling the lens behind like the application process and kind of showing them like, oh, this is how you actually do it to excel. Because I think there's this general consensus that white counterparts, for lack of better words, have more network and resources to be able to navigate these processes, whereas like their diverse counterparts may not, right? If you're from a low socioeconomic background where like you've never even been exposed to the corporate world, all of this is just very foreign to you. And I think that's what the real crux of the issue is when it comes to diverse talent actually accessing opportunities, specifically in early careers, because I guess these organizations, they have such large amount of applicants that they have to put all these different tests and all these various things in place to make sure that they're screening candidates in the most efficient way possible. And it just so happens that diverse talent never make it past those stages. So that's kind of like the landscape of what I see in early careers in DEI.
And from like a candidate perspective, what like from like your community, are there any specific challenges that you're seeing that they're facing when it comes to applying for these jobs?
Yeah, so it's
Also,
more... Yeah, sorry.
Just to butt in, what is the age range of your community, and who do you help get into jobs? Is it like interns, graduate? What does that look like as well?
Yeah, so to answer that question quickly, we look at experience range. So we look at the 0 to 5 year experience range. So from school leaver, like apprentice, interns, up until like analyst level, and then experienced hires as well within that 0 to 5 year experience range.
Very cool.
And there's a couple of reasons why I did that. Firstly, from like a commercial standpoint, what I started to notice is that the early careers market is very saturated. There's a lot of providers in this space, and organizations, for the most part, still struggle with predominantly getting experienced hires that are diverse into the building. And there's this general consensus. Like I remember I had a big head of talent for like a big organization say that, oh, it's just that when we climb up the experience ladder, the candidate pool shrinks from a diversity perspective. And I was like, that's just dead. Like, I don't want to swear on this podcast, but I was like, that's silly, because I know a lot of people that are black and are female that are super experienced, right? So it's just you don't have access to them, or you can't find them, or you can't make sweeping statements like that. So I think that's one of the reasons why we focus on that, to just kind of give us a competitive advantage, to kind of show organizations that, no, look, we can actually attract like experienced, like diverse hires as well. And then, yeah, on the early career lens, like we actually quantify early careers as 0 to 3 years. So we call it like the early parts of your career, literally, right? So from, I guess, 0 to 1 years is like fresh out of uni, school leaver and whatnot. And then from 2 to 3 years, you're literally in limbo, like trying to figure out the early parts of your careers. So that's pretty much like what we look at in that respect. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank
and
you.
then
I thought that was important context.
Yeah. And yeah, it's really important. And I think right now, obviously, majority of the work that you guys see us do is for early careers, because it's the season, like right now, right? And that's the demand from like the clients we're working with. But come January, it's gonna flip, because we have clients that also look for experienced hires. So that's pretty much what it is. To answer your question, Shoshana, I think the main challenge that we're seeing like from people within our community is honestly like just navigating like processes that they didn't really have insight to, right? So like these psychometrics, or like networking your way into a job, these kind of things, right? Where their white counterparts have certain advantages. It's just like they don't have any insight into navigating these processes. Because even me as well, like when I went to uni, to a non-Russell Group university, I genuinely didn't know that internships were actually a thing. So to a lot of people, this is like the corporate world is a very new world to them, like a lot of diverse talent. Like in my head, I was just like, I'm going to graduate and I'm going to get an office job. That's as far as what I thought the corporate world was.
I didn't even know things like Insight Days or Spring Weeks existed. I literally only found out about them like a year or 2 years ago.
I found out when I started working.
Whereas if you go to like a Russell Group uni like LSE or something like though, that's hammered into you.
Yeah,
I didn't even
exactly,
know these things existed.
But the thing is, what's so mad? Even then, there's intersectionality in the sense that diverse talent that go to these universities still don't know about this. Because even till this day, we have like a WhatsApp community of like 900 members,
That's
right?
insane.
And it's pretty mad. I'm not gonna lie. Even the 900 members in the chat that are very much like interested in like corporate careers and stuff, this is all new to them. That they are still like confused, like, what you guys do Insight Days, or there's corporate this, corporate that. So I think more than anything, to answer your question succinctly after rambling for a while, it's basically
Don't worry,
fact
we've
of
got an editor for a reason.
No, it's an information gap.
Yes.
There's just a lack of information when it comes to diverse talent, actually knowing about like these different industries and career paths versus like their counterparts. And I guess more than anything, that's why we make content, right? To basically try and fill this information gap as much as we can. And that's the reason why organizations pay us. That's why I exist, basically. I'm just making content as much as I can.
Yeah, love that. Okay, so I think in respect of time, we don't want to spend too much on the intro. We want to get into the tips and on attraction, retention, etc. So just on that note, before we move on to chapter 2, where we're going to ask Stephen about his tips and best practices, I actually wanted to share some interesting figures that we have around DE&I from an early careers perspective. Sure. So these are figures from the ISE, so the Institute of Student Employers, most recent student recruitment survey, which came out like last week. And it basically says that 47% of employers for graduates said that they now set themselves targets for recruitment based on EDI. And from a kind of school leaver and apprenticeship perspective, Holly, what's that?
40%. It's a little bit less, but 40% of the school and college leavers now set themselves targets for recruitment. Yeah.
And the most common areas of focus are gender and ethnicity. And employers are, and in terms of the amount of employers that specifically run activities around attracting both ethnic minorities and gender, 65% of employers said that they focus on specific activities for graduates.
46% for school and college leavers.
But also, interestingly, according to the data, less than half of those employers actually meet their targets. So out of the employers that said they have diversity targets specifically for ethnic minorities, which was 65%, only 27% of those employers said that they actually hit those targets. And from a school leaver perspective,
15%.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I'm trying to compute all the things in my head as well. But
it's not really for you. It's for like the listeners, basically. Which is interesting, and I think it definitely, even though you said that you're competing in a tough market where people are cutting kind of D&I initiatives, there is clearly a market for it according to this survey, especially when there's over 60% of early careers employers that say they have targets, but less than half of those are actually fitting those targets, right? Which is where you come in, basically.
Yeah, so controversial take, but I don't think there's a market. I think it's a bubble. And I think a lot of these like stats and a lot of organizations basically saying, oh yeah, we set targets. It's all optics. Because as a big organization, if basically there's like a mass movement that, oh, your organization is not diverse, of course you have to come online and basically tell people that, oh yeah, we set targets, because that's essentially what you're supposed to do. And what I started to realize is that there are a lot of organizations that just have head of DEIs as a purely, it's like a placeholder, like we're a big organization, of course we're supposed to have a head of DEI
to say that they have one, but they do you know the industries that do this the most? Like media industries, like people in media. Because what I started to notice was I would pitch to like a head of DEI and they're like, oh yeah, I just need to check in with my head of talent. And I'm like, how does that make sense? Like you're the one that's supposed to be basically like, you should have the purse strings to make decisions on stuff like this. Like, I just need to check on my head of talent, because they don't really have the decision making power. So I say this to say, I'm not really surprised that none of these people are hitting their targets, because I think those targets are, for lack of better words, arbitrary. And I don't think I don't think there's a big market, or like employers are receptive to addressing it as much as they say, because a lot of these things they're just supposed to say it because they're big organizations. And that's kind of like my thought process. And there's only, within the big organizations, there's only a few that really care, and it's not the organization as a whole that cares. It's someone within the organization. And that's what I've kind of noticed with this space that we exist in, because I've pitched to certain organizations that are now my client, that I pitched to like the head of DEI in their organization, and they were just like, yeah, I don't care about this. It's interesting because I haven't in detail looked at like the job titles that the data came from, but my understanding is it's people that are like head of early careers and early careers managers. So I guess from my perspective, when I speak to early careers managers, those are the people that seem more interested in D&I, rather like kind of what you said, rather than the kind of head of D&I.
The heads or I think it's just like a hit and miss, because I remember like one of the organizations we worked with, it was like some low level person that didn't even work in HR that managed to bring us in. In another organization, it was a staff member that was in like the ERG group. So what I started to notice is that you can't look at these organizations as the organization's view of how they approach DEI or how they approach early careers. It's honestly about the person that cares within the organization. But those stats, and I guess like
I mean, you can manipulate data in any
yeah,
way
do you know what I mean?
can't
Yeah,
you? Like
yeah.
people say, oh, 40% of Gen Z say this, and I'm like, well, what about the other 60%?
Exactly.
60% is the bigger number, but people will focus on the 40%.
Exactly. So to a certain extent, as much as like, as a CEO, I feel like I've become a bit more strategic and looking at granular stuff like data and whatnot. But then at the same time, I also just like come to realize that all of that stuff to a certain extent is performative because organizations have to maintain a certain image. So with that being said, a big organization with $1 billion turnover and investors that require you to have diverse standards, of course you have to come online and be like, yeah, we set targets.
Hey there, Shoshana here, just interrupting this episode to tell you about one of the main ways I work with employers. My training programs work with managers, graduates and apprentices to give them the support and tools they need to be confident in their roles. If my expertise sounds like it could be beneficial to your organisation, I'm currently booking work for the next few months. Head to my website at fairyjobmother.co.uk to fill out the contact form and enjoy the rest of this episode.
Let's move on to chapter 2 because we have not got long left. So chapter 2 is all about tips for attracting talent. So firstly, let's go on the other side. What would you say the biggest mistakes you see employers make are around this topic?
Yeah, like what gives you the ick?
Yeah, I feel like organizations get sucked into the bubble of like their perception of what they think like platforms that talent exist on. A lot of organizations be like, we need to be on TikTok. Like TikTok is where we need to be on. Respectfully, I just think if you're like a blue chip organization, like you being on TikTok, it's not really going to be taken in as much. And plus your approach to like making content on TikTok is not going to hit. I see a lot of brand companies that are on TikTok and it's just so cringe. I don't think it's that great.
It's also not that simple. Like, oh, we're going to get on
really
TikTok
isn't.
because I've read somewhere that it's really easy to go viral on
Yeah.
TikTok. We're going to go on TikTok.
It just
we're
doesn't
gonna
work
get
like
this
that.
crazy result.
No, so it doesn't work like that because we know that the reason why people even listen to us at a certain extent is because of the brand that we've built over time. Like brand is something that is so difficult to build.
Facts.
So with that being said, I think that's like a really big ick. It's kind of like they just get sucked into this bubble. I also think it's because of like certain suppliers like us that do exist kind of feed into this bubble as well. I'd say like bigger name suppliers that have been in the space for time where they don't really know what they're doing. And I think that's a big ick.
Such a bit of shade.
Yeah, I feel like and the reason why I say that is because like, you know, organizations that we work with, they've used these big name suppliers and then they're like, oh, it doesn't work. I find it so comical that I'm in business because like, how can you be a $1 billion company in an industry full of like all these suppliers that have been existing for so long, and then you come to me and be like, yeah, so like what have you done? It just doesn't work. I'm like, huh? Like how does that work? Like what are you guys doing?
Yeah, can you tell me about what platforms you use and how you do it?
Yeah, so I feel like to me, what I think doesn't get talked about enough is platform diversification. So there's a lot of talk about be on TikTok, be on TikTok, be on TikTok. But what I've noticed is that, at least from what I'm seeing from our perspective, is that we experience a lot of like audience fatigue because our brand, more than anything, even though people need jobs, people get tired when you promote stuff like 24/7. And what we started to notice from the data is that TikTok was a very big channel for us to basically attract talent, right? But what we started to notice is that when people see my face, they're just like, oh, she's going to promote another job. And I try to be as creative as possible to like integrate like promoting a job through like, you know, my Amex card being hacked or something. But still, like people still see through that. So with that being said, what we started to find and what we noticed was that you basically have to diversify your platform. So we're very bullish on email. We double down on email marketing a lot. We have like 18,000 subscribers via email.
That's insane.
Yeah, we're very bullish on LinkedIn. We're very bullish on LinkedIn, so much so, this is a secret, guys. This is a secret. Yeah, and you're hearing it
exclusive
first.
content.
So much so that we actually advise, and I feel like one person would know this on this podcast, we actually advise one of our clients on how to post on LinkedIn, right? And use their channels, and their staff to communicate their employer brand to attract talent. So rather than like us having to use our platform and our brand, and quite respectfully, like my brand, to attract talent, we're basically like helping organizations like use their employees like to basically like communicate like their employer brand on LinkedIn and use that as a mechanism to attract talent, because we also feel like it's more sustainable and scalable as well. Because like, for example, if tomorrow I was to get like 30 clients that wanted to work with us, I can't promote 30 employers on my channels. Like as much as I want to, I just can't. I have ideas, but I can't. But we can use their employees as mechanisms to attract talent. And I feel like that's a very, it's a missed opportunity that a lot of employers need to leverage, because I think it's easier to grow a brand on LinkedIn. And I think it's easier like to basically like attract and promote stuff on LinkedIn. Whereas like something like TikTok that is so native to entertainment, it's not the easiest place to come and start talking about careers and stuff. Whereas LinkedIn,
It's a skill, like you have to learn.
yeah. Whereas like LinkedIn, people expect you to promote jobs.
Yeah.
And we've like literally advised like people that had no presence on LinkedIn and use their channels to basically promote jobs
So what
and
are your
attract talent.
tips for that then? How what do you advise?
Yeah, so I think what organizations should do is basically just find like an employee champion within their organization, someone that's already vocal on LinkedIn, and leverage their brand to basically communicate like your employer brand. And I think it's so sad as well because a lot of these big organizations actually censor their employees from posting on LinkedIn.
Ridiculous, especially industries like investment banking. Like I didn't even know it was a thing that like you can't say you work at a bank on LinkedIn.
Yeah, you can't engage with the company's LinkedIn post.
It's actually pathetic. But then again, like also, who is your company to like be able to tell you what to do? Like that's
exactly. And it got to the point where like one of our close friends had to. She literally had to take her name off the. I think you thought she had to take her employee off the LinkedIn so she could like post. And I feel like that's such a missed opportunity because the amount of engagement she gets on her post, that's like, it's like to me, if you have a staff member that you guys have clearly hired and then they start bringing more attraction to your brand, it's like, why wouldn't you want more people like that?
Some people just don't get it though.
Yeah, they don't get it, but I think that's like a missed opportunity, and that's what we're basically trying to capitalize on. And we have like a lot of exciting announcements soon in terms of like how our service has basically evolved and what we're doing for employers now, because we're actually trying to double down on like helping organizations use their employees to basically build their brand to attract talent, because it's just a scalable business model, and it's like it's really guys, if I show you the data, it's ridiculous. Like, you know, one of the organizations that we've worked with, like we've leveraged like her personal brand to attract like 1,600 people to like their website to view jobs and events and stuff.
I think we've spoken a little bit about your platform, we've spoken a little bit about socials. I think in general, before we move on to chapter 3, which is more around like retention, maybe for employers that outside of social, what would you say are some kind of maybe do's and don'ts for employers in terms of like attracting diverse talent?
Yeah, so I would say like do be a bit more open-minded to different tactics to attract talent, especially if you've literally gone year on year and you're experiencing the same challenges and the same problems, and then you get introduced to like a new supplier in the game, right? But you're still cynical about if it works. You're here for a reason. You're here because of like what you've been doing currently doesn't work. So with that being said, you need to be open-minded, and I think that's really important. And I think traditional industries like investment banking and whatnot, and just employers that have like a lot of legacy behind them, they're just really skeptical. I also feel like because early careers and like employer branding, these are industries that sometimes people fall into without actually having the depth of expertise on how to actually like market, because attracting talent is all about marketing.
Yes, and people that work in HR, talent, they don't have marketing background. They don't have
so it's like you need to be open and receptive. So I feel like that's like a big do. And I guess a big don't is basically don't fall into the trap of like optics and perspective. I'm so sorry, like at the end of the day, like you doing all these events and like going to all these like I guess like career fairs and whatnot, that is not at the heart of attracting and hiring talent. What you should be doing is looking at the data, seeing where people are dropping off, seeing what's actually like, you know, causing people to not actually stay or like, you know, come to your organization in the first place, and double down on working on that. Appearing at a bunch of events and careers fairs is not going to do that. And I think like honestly, sometimes I get really frustrated with if I even want to be in this industry, because a lot of things is about perception and like optics. And it's the reason why I shout and talk a lot on LinkedIn, because as much as yes, it's to attract talent, I also need to do that, because if I don't do that, then I won't get any business. And I just feel like organizations need to stop falling into this like perception stuff and really need to like sit down and like look at what's not working and double down on that.
I feel
So go on.
I was going to say, well, on the point of data, can you give us some insights on how employers can actually measure success of things that you have suggested if they were to go and do them, and ROI? How do you do that with your clients?
Yeah, I think it's very straightforward. If you say, oh, we don't have X amount of black talent, we don't have X amount of female talent, a great way to see if what you've implemented this year has worked is by looking at your hires. And if you still don't have that, then clearly it hasn't worked. And then you also want to look at every stage of the recruitment process, right? So that's why, like, when I kind of like negotiated a deal with like one of our biggest clients to date, I really had to sit down and say, I don't know if I can help you because I don't think this problem is like attracting talent. I was like, you're a $1 billion organization. Everybody wants to work at your organization. Like, tell me where candidates drop off. And I guess, like, because my mechanism and my service is very much attracting talent, okay, cool. If you tell me that candidates drop off at the application process, what I need to do is I need to sit down and figure out, okay, cool, what information is lacking that I can make content on to basically make sure that people are more informed about the application process, right? Or do I need to advise, like, you know, one of your team members, like, to basically talk about like the application process on LinkedIn and whatnot, right? So I think, yeah, the way to measure clear ROI when it comes to attracting and hiring diverse talent is just by seeing where they drop off in the process of attraction and if they are like there at the stage of hire as well. To me, it's very binary and straightforward.
Also, how do you measure it from the different platforms? Because you mentioned diversification. How do you measure it from different platforms until the end, until hire, and then you can see which one is most effective? How do you do that?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did is that I noticed that marketing is a very airy-fairy industry in the sense that everyone like kind of quantifies stuff based on like views. And that's just not good enough, right? Because I could get you like 1 million views, but how do I know of those 1 million views who's diverse and who's actually clicked apply? So what we ended up doing is I spent a lot of my money that we made from the business to build like an ATS on our website. So we built our own ATS that can basically track as much data points in terms of applications. So the way it works is that on our platform, we list the jobs of our employer partners, but then we collate data based on people that are actually applying. So the way it works is that we create content on all these different platforms and funnel them to our website. Candidates apply and they basically create a profile and include like various different data points. And then when they click apply, we have all that data in an anonymized GDPR compliant format.
So he says. No.
I actually used to work in compliance. And then we basically anonymize that data and we aggregate that data to basically clearly measure the ROI from our marketing efforts all the way to people actually click and apply. So that way we can actually go to organizations and be like, okay, cool. 400 people click apply for jobs on our website, yeah. Out of those 400 people, 70% are black, 30% are from female backgrounds, and we collate every single data point that we can basically to kind of showcase that, oh no, there is ROI from our marketing efforts. So if you are not seeing that translate into applications on your end, maybe there's something on your process that you need to kind of optimize. But as far as we're concerned, we're doing our job, which is attracting the diverse talent and building tech. I hate saying like I'm building tech, but it's tech. It's like a lot of tech that comes behind that. It's like really expensive to build and we've taken a lot of time to build that. But that's the way that we're able to kind of quantify ROI to employers to kind of show them that our marketing efforts is working. And last thing I would say is that we built that not to show employers ROI. We actually built that because me and my twin Steph, we were like, how do we know that we're attracting diverse talent, right? How do we know our marketing is working? Because we can make all these like funny videos that you see and stuff, but how does that translate into applications? And
I think that's so clever and important though, because it kind of touches upon the point you've said. People throw numbers around so differently, but I think in the industry in general, not enough people are actually questioning what does that mean.
Exactly.
You said 1,000 people attend this event, but like what does that data?
What does that actually?
Questioning it, which is why when they work with other suppliers and they say, "Oh, we didn't get the results," it's because you can manipulate data and numbers in any way you want. So I think what you're doing is so clever, honestly, and like
And last thing I was just going to mention,
people should be threatened because you are right. I'm not like not in a big-headed way, but like you know how like. You know, I have high I'm not easily impressed, basically.
No, and you know what? And I think that's why I appreciate our friendship, because Shoshana is the one person that keeps me honest and challenges every single thing that I do. Like, you know, you've done it like privately, you've done it publicly and stuff, and it keeps me honest, and I like it because I feel like you can't be you become an echo chamber of yourself if you just agree with all your ideas and stuff. And I think that's why like I'm so vocal and I put all my ideas out there because I want the challenges and whatnot. I want to, you know, I've gone through so many iterations of this business where like I remember pitching a service that employers are like, yeah, that's bullshit. That doesn't work. And da-da-da-da. So like, I really appreciate that. But like, we're even trying to go one step further, not only in building like out the ATS, but even to the point of like, right now, what we're really tracking is application clicks that lead onto like our employer sites. We actually want to be able to integrate our employers' applications onto like our website. So then we actually know that, oh no, we can actually record like the entire life cycle, right? And to me, that's like a bigger challenge. but I'm really passionate about doing things to a high standard. And I want to make sure that, you know, when I come online and I'm telling people, yeah, we attracted 500,000 people with their views, I can go down the list like on a granular level, yeah, by application, by data points, by people that actually applied, by quality. And it just takes a lot of work to do that. But a lot of these suppliers don't really care about that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I just want to say I think you're like changing the industry and like
I'm trying.
I feel like there's, you know, probably, I mean, we know through conversations we've had, there are lots of people that feel threatened by what you're doing, and so they should.
I think it's just about hanging on in there, because I think it's like really difficult, because what I started to notice is that with these organizations, you can't think about them as organizations. It's about finding people that care. And it's really hard. Do you know what I mean? But I'm so confident in what I'm doing, and I just want to hang in there, and I just feel like I'm really close. So yeah, but I think I appreciate that, guys.
We can see the confidence as well.
Definitely.
Hey, Holly here. Just interrupting this episode to let you know about one of the main ways that I work with employers. As an employer branding strategist, creating standout campaigns to help you attract new apprentices via social media. If this resonates with you or you're interested, connect with me via LinkedIn and fill out the contact form linked in my profile. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
Let's move on to chapter 3.
Chapter 3, which is all about how to retain the diverse talent, right?
So yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to, I was just going to say, like, obviously as someone who's black, who has worked in corporate, what are your thoughts on this? How can companies actually keep people in? Because again, when I've personally had conversations with employers, etc., they're saying they can't keep black talent either.
Yeah. So what I always tell organizations is that you can't force someone to stay within your organization. And I don't think there's like a silver bullet to basically retain talent, because if talent wants to leave, they'll leave. Like, look at me. I left because I wanted to go start a business.
Yeah.
But what you can do is you can increase the likelihood of someone staying within your organization by like optimizing certain things. And I always say to organizations as well, I cannot, with my service, it's talent attraction. It is not retention. Like, do you know what I mean? So I can't guarantee you that they'll stay. What I can do, though, is make sure that we're attracting the right type of talent that will stay. And I think that's what you can do, because I think ever so often organizations like optimize for, let's attract as much talent as possible. But then it's like, are you attracting talent that actually wants to stay within your organization? Like, do they actually want to work in these industries? I think that's really important. So I feel like at the attraction stage, you really need to make sure that the employee value proposition, you're communicating that so effectively that it's only attracting people that you want it to attract, so much so that it will put people off that don't want to work with your organization.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, no, we love that, and we speak about that. I think also another thing, and what I'm seeing is lots of employers, they have an amazing interview application, that amazing process, right? But then where there's a disconnect is when people are actually in roles, there's a huge disconnect, and a lot of the time those teams aren't always speaking to each other, which I think is like a wider issue. And
also, it's not even that, it's the early careers teams, and then all the managers and the actual teams, they aren't even, there's not even a process, and they aren't even communicating with each other.
And that's why I put my hat up to like what you do, Shoshana, in terms of retention, because I could never build I could never build a service around retention, because I feel like it's such a layered, like complex thing to do. But I think, my perspective is like, just make sure that you're attracting the right type of talent. And that's really by like making sure that you're communicating your employee value proposition in the most effective way, that it puts people that don't. So for example, like one of our clients is in the energy space, and they're all about, we want talent that cares about saving the planet and da-da-da-da-da. So we communicate that so much so, and then most people don't care about that. Most people just want to make money. But that's great, because we're attracting the people that actually care about sustainability and stuff like that. And turns out a lot of people care about sustainability. Who knew? Do you know what I mean? But then that way, you attract people that actually want to work within your organization. So I think from an attraction lens, that's how I kind of approach it. And I guess from a retention standpoint, and keep me honest here, Shoshana, but I think it's just about creating an environment where people actually want to stay. But it starts by like actually listening to people that join your organization. Like, why do you want to stay? What would make you stay? Like, what do you want to make you stay? I think it's important to basically like optimize and cultivate an environment that essentially does that. And that is as far as my expertise extends to when it comes to retention, because everything else that I would want to say is just conceptual.
Yeah.
I don't think it actually works. I think it's just like, it's concepts of things that I think would work. Do you know what I mean? But for the most part, my perspective is always, my perspective is always like, just make sure that you're attracting the right talent.
Yeah.
And I guess another thing as well that I kind of saw from your content, Shoshana, that I was gonna like repurpose and make content on is more so like communicating the realities of industries that you're actually attracting talent into. understand that, yeah, if you're working in investment banking, it's long hours, it's really hard, and you need to actually get that. Like, it's not hunky dory. It's not like Wolf of Wall Street. Like, you're working a lot of hours, and there's gonna be people that are motivated by that. There's people where there's talent in the market that they want to work the long hours to make the most money possible, and that is what you need to speak to. Do you know what I mean? And just really communicate the realities of your industry. I think that's really important as well, because then it makes sure that there's no missed expectation of, oh, I thought it was gonna be this and it's that. So yeah, I think that's really important as well to aid retention.
Exactly. And I also think that in general, some employers are still kind of not getting that in general, like for the young generation, like they don't intend to stay at your company for like 20 years. Or like there was a conversation going on like the ISC WhatsApp group the other day around like leadership, and some employers were saying they offer rotational programs, but they've been reading that like management and leadership positions aren't on Gen Z's wish list. And I was like, yeah, that's fair enough, but also that's based on the concept of leadership and management in its current form. Things need to change. Things are going to change as more young people come into the working world, right?
Yeah,
so they don't want leadership maybe in its current form, because realistically for the long hours, not that much extra pay, it's not actually worth it, right?
Yeah.
But if that changed, so I also think it's really interesting that, number one, lots of companies are still caught up on thinking that
this is how it's always been.
This is how it's always been, and they don't get that, okay, people aren't going to stay for 20 years. But equally, if you change up what you're doing and you make it more in the terms of what young people actually want, then maybe they could stay.
Yeah, because the working world is evolving, right? I mean, think about I couldn't even imagine when I started working that there would become a time where we could all work from home forever. That's actually a thing. Do you know what I mean? That was so, to me, I was like, oh, graduate, go to the office 9 to 5, and you're just going to do that forever. Whereas now it's evolving, and it's there's this stat about in 2030 or something, a significant portion of the workforce is going to be Gen Z. They are going to change the way leadership is and stuff like that. And I think what organizations need to do is be adaptive to that. But again, and this is why I said, Shoshana, I put my hat off to you to working in something like retention. These are multi-siloed, complex organizations with so many different people that it's to implement change to basically optimize for making sure people stay within your organization. It's not an easy job. And I also think majority of the people that are in these roles aren't the right people for those roles. But that's besides the point. So with that being said, I totally get that. Yeah, this is the reason why we're in business, right? This is the reason why we exist, to make sure that the problem exists, but we're doing everything that we can to basically reduce it. But yeah.
I think I could go all day asking you more questions on it. I've got so many more questions, but we are.
Nah, no, we need to do a part 2 or catch up. We need to do a part 2 or catch up.
If you've enjoyed this episode, drop a comment below or email us or let us know or let Stephen know. Let someone know.
You guys are going to see this everywhere. And they're literally going to repurpose
and if there's demand, then we'll definitely do part 2, because I could ask questions all day. We could really go into the nitty gritty, but
we don't have time today. So anyway, on that note, we're going to go to the final chapter, chapter 4, which is the homework chapter. So
I mean, Stephen, do you want to maybe, we've spoken about a lot today, do you want to maybe summarise what your kind of top 3 takeaways, and then we can do the activity? Does that work, Holly?
Yeah. That work?
All right, cool. So I would say in short, listen to your employees more than anything, right? Because they are the North Star to kind of communicate how to make sure that you're being reflected in the right way, because the 9 times out of 10, the employees staying within your organization, they're there for a reason. And if they're still staying, they must be there for a reason. So talk to them a lot more. I would also say then be open-minded to the way you're doing things when it comes to talent attraction and talent retention, mainly because the world of work is continually evolving. So if that being said, open-mindedness is all you can do at the end of the day. And I guess number 3 tip just for talent attraction, just because I want to plug what we do, is really doubling down on trying to leverage the employee champions within your organization that are vocal, not just on LinkedIn, but online as well. Because I'm so sorry, if I was still working in an organization, I'm a goldmine for attracting talent, because I have such a big brand that everyone wants to know what I do. And I feel those are the people that you need to invest in. I mean, one of our friends, Dan, right? I can imagine the amount of people that probably want to work in BT, because he's so big online. That's he's a talent attraction house, right? And I feel employees need to be open-minded to basically just doubling down on that.
But then again, how can they create incentive? Because if you've spent your time building something online,
of course,
you're just getting loads of free work for your employer.
It definitely is. And I think that's that's where the employee advocacy thing comes in and whatnot. And honestly, I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert in the nuances and intricacies of that. And I think when I came into this business in this landscape, I was like, yeah, I want to do retention, attraction, da, 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 da. And what I started to realize is that, like, you know, one of those areas is big enough, right? And I just want to double down on making sure that I'm doing that area really well. So when organizations come to me with like such complex, like nuanced problems as like employee advocacy, like retention, I'm just like, yeah, I'm not the person. Like, how can my talent attraction thing help you? And genuinely, I've literally turned down working with companies because I'm setting myself up for failure if I tell you that my attraction thing can work for your employee advocacy training thing, because it doesn't. I've referred like people that we talk to like you guys, like just by saying, oh yeah, I know someone like named Shoshana, she does like the retention stuff. Like I know someone like an apprenticeship that would be better, like because I can't help you. And I think it's really important to do that to maintain the integrity of this like space that we exist in. Because I know other suppliers, big suppliers, don't do it. But yeah.
Oh, shame.
Yeah.
And then finally, Steve, do you have a little homework task that you would be able to set our
I'm looking
listeners
forward to
to
hearing
kind of
this.
implement what they've learned?
Oh my God, I was really thinking about this and I just don't know. Homework. I guess like it really just revolves around like my summaries, to be honest. I'd say if we want to make it really practical, conduct more state interviews. So sit down, as a talent team, employer branding team or whatnot, and just like really brainstorm as a team. Write down a list of questions basically to kind of understand, okay, cool, why is your current early careers cohort staying within your organization? What attracted them in the first place? What would they like? What would they appreciate to be better? And I think that's your North Star to basically going back into like the talent market to attract talent and to make sure that they stay within your organization. And it sounds so like basic, but it's like honestly just like ask the current people that you've attracted that like are within your organization that are staying, because you guys are doing something, right? You know what I mean? If you are attracting people and people are staying, but it's just about like doubling down on that thing that's working. So yeah, I'd say that's like a very practical thing that you can do, because I think employers are always looking for like the next best like new thing, but sometimes it's like it's right in front of you.
Yeah, I love that.
And also speak to everyone, because again, a lot of the time they pick the best people or like the people that are always doing or like shining employees.
Because it's perception.
Speak to everyone, right? The people that will actually tell you the truth as well, not what you want to hear.
Yeah, most definitely. So I'd say that's like a practical tip that I've just thought of.
Yes, love that. Okay, perfect.
That was great.
Yeah, that takes us to the end of the episode. So thank you so much. Obviously, you've been, kind enough to come on our podcast. So maybe give yourself a little plug. If people want to find you or reach out to you, how can they do that?
Yeah, no. So yeah, just type in like Stephen Beyond Education. If you type it everywhere,
on all platforms.
Yeah, no, literally on every single platform. We're doubling down on SEO and taking over the world. But yeah, literally Stephen Beyond Education everywhere. My face should come up, or Stephanie's face should come up as well. Thank you guys so much for having me as well. And
thanks for coming on. We appreciate your time.
Nah, likewise. And I value like my friendship with Shoshana, because like she's been there from the start. I also like appreciate all the stuff you're doing, Holly. I think you guys are really sick. I plug you guys all the time. And yeah, like I'm gonna milk this podcast for the content.
Yes, love that.
As we should.
But yeah.
Thank you for listening to Future Talent Talks. For more tips and insights from me, Holly,
or me, Shoshana, subscribe to our mailing list via the link in the episode description and subscribe to our podcast. When you subscribe, it helps our podcast reach more people, ultimately helping more young people.
P.S. Don't forget to tune back in next Monday at 12:30 p.m. for another brand new episode.
See you soon.